Good morning. I'm going to need somebody to let me know if you can't hear, because I can't hear myself. So I want to bring greetings to you from my family, and they're here, so I'd like them to stand up and turn around. Jennifer is my wife. And then Heather and Timmy. Heather is a senior in high school. Timmy's a sophomore. And Nigeria is our home. We've been out in Nigeria since 1999. For Heather, she went when she was 4 years old, and Timmy when he was 2. And so they really don't know the States very well. They're getting to know it this year. And some major changes for us in that way. I also want to bring greetings to you from some of our partner churches in West Africa, partner churches of LCMS. And so at the top left, we have Christian Ekong, Archbishop of the Lutheran Church of Nigeria. And over on the right side is Reverend Amos Bole of the Lutheran Church in Liberia. Down at the bottom here is Dr. Paul Finn, President of the Lutheran Church in Ghana. And Mike Rodewald is our regional director for LCMS Africa Missions. This is our larger missionary group. It's Lutheran Bible translators and LCMS Office of International Mission missionaries combined, serving throughout Africa. So Africa's a large place, but we don't have that many missionaries there anymore. We used to have quite a few, and we've downsized primarily because so many things that the missionaries were doing in the past are now things that the national churches are able to do without the missionaries. And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." Sometimes we don't always get things straight when we look at doing ministry, reaching out to other people. We sometimes forget that these are the two foundational commandments for any other church work to take place. Love God, love your neighbor. Once that's established, then we're free to proceed with other things, and then God commands us, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." That's a few years ago. That's me when I was in Nigeria as a kid. My parents were missionaries in Nigeria. My father went in 1962 to teach. My mother went in 1961 to teach. They met each other there and got married there. And so all of my brothers and my sister were born there, except for my oldest brother, who was born on furlough in California. So I grew up there. Nigeria was my home. And in 1987, I came to the States for college. That was Concordia, Seward, Nebraska. That's where I met Jennifer. And from early on, I knew that I wanted to be a missionary teacher. I remember the first time actually verbalizing that was in 3rd grade when my teacher asked me what I wanted to do, and no hesitation there. I want to teach in mission school. And so when I met Jennifer and we started dating, again, there was no hesitation there. I needed to let her know up front, I'm going to be a missionary. If we're going to go anywhere with this relationship, you need to know that, because this is where I'm going. If you're ready, we'll move forward. If not, then we can't. In 1999, let me back up just a second there. After college, we went to Chicago, and I was teaching in Lutheran high school, Luther East, and Jennifer was teaching at a Lutheran elementary school. She was teaching grade 4, and after 3 years, we decided to move down to Texas to help my mother take care of my older brother. I've got an older brother with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. He was diagnosed when he was 5 years old, and the doctors told him he wouldn't live past his teenage years. He's 45 years old now, but he needs a lot of care. My father died from cancer in 91, and my mother has been taking care of my brother since that time, so it was 1994 that we moved down to Texas to help my mother for a while to take care of my brother. And at that point, I went into computer training and worked with some computer technical support, telephone tech support, and God prepared me in that way for the work that He wanted me to do in Nigeria. So in 1999, we were called by the church to go out as missionaries, as teachers, to teach in the boarding school in Jos, Nigeria, that I had attended as a boarding student for 12 years. My parents were living about 300 miles south of where the school was, so I pretty much grew up at the school. My initial assignment was to teach math and physics and to start up a new computer network at the school. In 2001, Jennifer joined me teaching when the kids were old enough to be in kindergarten. Then she started teaching music at the school. Initially, she was teaching choral music, but after a couple of years, the band director left, and they did not find a replacement, so Jennifer inherited band, and I inherited instrument repair. In 2007, LCMS asked me to come partway out of the school. And so they asked me to stay on half-time as a technical-only role so that I would be free and flexible to move around different places when they needed me to. And they asked me then to do computer training for our partner churches in the English-speaking countries in West Africa. So I had a series of workshops in Liberia and Sierra Leone and in southern Nigeria. They also asked me to do communications and computer tech support for all of our African missionaries. I didn't usually travel for that, but by email or by telephone would help them work through issues that they were having. So these are the countries that I was assigned to, the English-speaking countries in West Africa. Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Gambia, those were former British colonies. And Liberia was a country formed for black Americans from here that wanted to return to their homeland that had originally, their ancestors had been brought over here at the slave trade time. So those 5 countries all speak English as their primary language. In 2010, LCMS asked me to step completely out of the school, and my new assignment then became volunteer coordinator for short-term mission trips. My assignment at this point is still within the same 5 countries in West Africa, to be a support for any short-term mission teams or for any individual missionaries who are going to serve in any of those 5 countries for periods of 2 years or less. And that's my role. With the short-term mission program, we found some key things, and you guys have already as a church been experienced in short-term mission trip activity for quite a while. Tomball has been instrumental in groundbreaking and program design for short-term stuff. So at this point, what we're doing with short-term trips is encouraging congregations to do something over the long term. We are doing short-term trips, and short-term we usually look at a week to a month as a short-term team trip. We do partner with the local efforts, so whatever we do as a team, we encourage the teams coming to do something that the local churches have asked for them to do, instead of to come and say, what can we come up with that we see that they need? We're going to them and saying, what do you think that you need? How can we help you accomplish that? And the reason for that is the things that we have brought to them that have not been their ideas, historically, they fail as soon as the missionaries leave. But the things that they ask for, if we help them to do it, those things last for the long haul. And then for repeat trips, we find that important because relationships are so important to mission work. And that just goes back to the first and second commandments there of love God, love your neighbor. Without those relationships, anything that we accomplish is really of little or no value to the people that we're trying to serve. Some of the opportunities that our West Africa churches are asking for short-term teams to participate in are seminary support. Now that's primarily for pastors, but there are some opportunities for people who aren't pastors to help out. Pastor-to-pastor connections, where pastors from here and pastors from overseas sit down together and go back and review some of the doctrinal foundations of the Lutheran Church and support and encourage each other in that way. Lutheran education, teachers. Liberia has a huge number of Lutheran schools that they're looking for help with. The Lutheran Church in Ghana has 4 primary schools, actually kindergarten through 8th grade. They're ranging 400 to 950 students per school, and they're looking for some help with that. Computer training. Pretty much anybody who uses a computer here in the States would be able to provide some training for some of our church leaders in West Africa. Computer use is booming in West Africa, but most people have not had an opportunity for any formal training on computers, and sitting down with them and saying, what is it that you're trying to do? Let me show you how to do that, is what they need. They're not looking for formal classes on computers, just how do I get my daily work accomplished? Construction opportunities, lots of opportunities for that. Putting roofs on churches or building new chapels, constructing the seminaries that the churches are trying to build. And then agricultural work is another opportunity. The people there know how to farm. They know how to live and feed themselves, but they're not very good with long-term planning, crop rotation, different things like that. There are things that we can bring to them, and there are things that we can learn from them, and so it's a neat partnership. And then eyeglass clinics is something also that's a big need out there. And this is where I've been talking with Julie, and we're looking at seeing how we can tie in this congregation to eyeglass clinics in West Africa. I know that you guys have been doing that in East Africa for a while, and this is a new opportunity that's being considered. Last month, I heard from one of the Lutheran Bible translator families when we were up in Wisconsin at the Beautiful Feet Conference, and he said, the church in Ghana is asking for eyeglass clinics. Where do we stand with that? The reason they're asking for them is that they are very heavily involved right now in literacy work up in the north. But the problem, the biggest challenge to them with the literacy work is people can't read the papers. They can't see well enough to read the papers. They need this to get accomplished so that they can proceed with literacy workshops. It's not just to help people see, it's to continue with the work of the church in a variety of ways. Relationship is the key. The long-term impact of short-term missions is because of the relationships that are established. When you go out the first time to a place in Africa, you are a stranger to them. Now, they'll welcome you, but they don't know you at all. When you go back the second time, you're a long-lost friend. And at that point, anything that you do, they welcome and embrace in a big way. Even if you go out with new people, they say, these people belong with you, and you, we know, the relationship is instantly there, and what gets accomplished is so much more. When I was living in Nigeria, one of my responsibilities there, supporting the other missionaries, was to keep up with immigration work. And so I would take papers down to the immigration office. One day I went in there and I met somebody that I had not met before. He was an older gentleman. And he met me at the door and asked me for my papers, so I handed them to him. He looked at them and just started reading the letterhead, Lutheran Church of Nigeria, Lutheran Church. I had a friend. Did you know what Reverend Walter Rasch? I said, yes, that was my father. He didn't know that my dad had passed away in 91. And this was almost 18 years later. And the letterhead, Lutheran Church of Nigeria, caused him to remember a dear friend. And that made an impact on me to say, I want to be that type of person. I want to be somebody that is so much of a friend to somebody that after not seeing them for 18 years, the person can still remember me because of my relationship. That's become one of my goals in life. I'm not very good at it yet. God's forgiving of that. Africa is about 4 times the size of the 48 states of the U.S., the continental states there. A lot of work needs to get done. Missions have been involved in Africa for many, many years. Right now, we hear so much in the news about the growth of Islam in North Africa. What we don't hear enough about in the news is that Christianity is growing faster in Africa than Islam is. That's encouraging, but the world doesn't promote that concept, and that's discouraging. I don't know how much you guys have, I don't know what type of news gets here, what type of detail gets here about some of the things going on in West Africa. But in Nigeria, we were living close to the center of the country, up here in Jos. Where I grew up, where my parents were doing Bible translation, was down here in the northern part of Cross River State. And then our church headquarters is all the way down in the south here. That's about a 500-mile distance from Jos down to Uyo. So Nigeria is a large country. It's larger than Texas. We've got over 500 languages spoken in Nigeria. But English is the unifying language because of it being a former British colony. I grew up in Jos at the boarding school. And while I was growing up there, we would hear from time to time about conflicts taking place up in the northern part of Nigeria, Muslim-Christian conflicts. We'd hear about problems up in, I think I lost my pointer. Up in the corner, up in Maiduguri. Maiduguri is about 12 hours away from Jos. Sometimes at the other corner, over in Sokoto, also about 12 hours away. Sometimes it got closer. Kano or Kaduna, 3.5, 4 hours away from Jos. And on rare occasion, we would hear about conflict in Bauchi, about an hour and 45 minutes away. But through all of that, Jos was the city of peace. The Muslims lived in the northern side of Jos. The Christians lived in the southern side. They governed each half of the city. They worked together. They interacted together. And as they watched the conflict going on around them, they said, we're not going there. Jos is going to be where Muslims and Christians can coexist without conflict. And that was the case until 2001. In 2001, September 7th, just 4 days before the terrorist attack here of 9/11, the Muslims came out of mosque worship Friday afternoon, and they went through the city of Jos, burning churches and killing Christians. That lasted for about 10 days before the government was able to get a good control over the whole situation again. So during that time, our mission school closed, and we pretty much just stayed locked up in our compounds as much as possible. We stayed in our houses and waited for the government to get things back under control, and then we continued. Peace came back. It took several months, but peace did come back. In 2008, we had another occurrence of the same thing. Again, the Muslims coming out Friday after worship and going through burning and killing. And again, it lasted about 2 weeks. From that time, peace never really returned to Jos. It was tension all the time, sometimes more tension, sometimes less tension, but never peaceful. When we were here in the States last home service, December 2010, on Christmas Eve, we got word that in Nigeria there had been 2 hand-tossed bombs in public areas, and that those were claimed by a relatively new terrorist group in Nigeria, an Islamic radical group. That changed the way the conflict was going, because with the bombs coming in instead of knives and guns, the risk level went up. And so we returned to Nigeria. Things again were under control. The government, we didn't ever feel threatened from that. We just continued to live and watch carefully what was going on. The missions worked closely together so that they could collect intelligence. They had a lot of contacts within the government and the military and within the Muslim community, and so we proceeded. But then in January of 2012, things took a turn again for the worse as the terrorists started using car bombs. So the first car bomb was about 2.5 or 3 miles from our house. And it was a large enough bomb that our living room was shaking when the bomb happened. St. Louis called us at that time and said 2 things. 1, if there's another bomb, you need to be prepared to evacuate. And 2, for the meantime, you need to avoid all large group gatherings. For me and for my assignment, that wasn't a big problem because none of my work dealt with large groups. For Jennifer and the kids, that had a huge impact. We were told not to go to church. The kids could go to school, but not to school chapel. Jennifer could teach classes, but she could not conduct the band concerts or direct the choir concerts. And so for Jennifer, it really meant that her ministry came to a fast, almost halt. For the next couple months then, we watched things closely to see what would happen. In March, we were missing an LBT LCMS retreat in Ghana because of the schedule at school. It wasn't good for our kids to miss out on the things going on in Jos. So we scheduled our own private retreat with another missionary family there. And while we were about a half hour away at our retreat location, we got word of another car bomb in Jos. So Monday, St. Louis called us, and the end of the conversation was that we needed to leave Jos, leave Nigeria on Thursday. It was very difficult because of relationships with the people there. So many friends from years. The relationships had opened so many different doors to ministry, and those doors closed for us. So on March 17th, we arrived back in the States, and we've been here on a long home service since that time. In the same call that St. Louis asked us to leave Nigeria, they also asked us, please do not leave mission work. We would like you to continue serving in Africa, and if at all possible, continue in West Africa. And so we did make the commitment to return to West Africa. We'll be leaving on Wednesday, but we'll be going to Ghana. Ghana is a very peaceful country at this point. They have gone through multiple sets of democratic elections without conflict. The corruption level in the country is much less than most African nations. They've kind of looked at their neighbor, Nigeria and West Africa, and said, we do not want to be like Nigeria. We've seen what they've done to themselves. We don't want to go that route. And they have really worked hard toward not doing that. So we're looking forward to the opportunities that are there for us in Ghana. My assignment doesn't change. I'm still working with the 5 countries speaking English in West Africa. I still get to take short-term teams into Nigeria, but the church doesn't want me to live there, and they don't want me to take women or kids into Nigeria at this time. They'll monitor and see how things go from there. This is what worship looks like in Nigeria right now. Friday afternoons for mosque, Sunday mornings for the Christian services. There are police and military checkpoints out. Vehicles are not allowed to go within a half a mile of any place of worship, so people park at a distance and walk, and they're often scanned with metal detectors before entering church buildings and that sort of thing. So Jennifer's work changes a lot. We don't have a mission school in Ghana like we had in Nigeria, so she won't be teaching missionaries' kids. But she'll be joining me in my work of hosting short-term mission trips, and we're looking forward to seeing a team from you guys out there in the near future. When we are not involved with hosting short-term teams, either because there's a lull in schedule or whatever else is going on, then Jennifer and I, as teachers, Lutheran teachers, will be deeply involved with the Ghanaian Lutheran schools. These schools were started originally as private schools for the purpose of generating revenue for the church to use for other operations. But over the years, the church has looked at what we're doing with Lutheran schools here, and they've said, we're selling ourselves short. We're not using our schools the way we could for outreach in our communities and for growth of the church, and we would like help to do that. So they've been asking for LCMS to send up to 20 missionary teachers to teach in their schools. LCMS has been hesitant to do that because we didn't have any missionaries living in Ghana that would be able to be a support structure for those teachers. With us being relocated to Ghana, LCMS is now again pursuing finding teachers to send out there to teach in the Lutheran schools in Ghana. When we came back in March, Heather right away said, can I just stay in the States? I don't want to go out to Ghana. It's going to be my senior year. I don't want to go to 2 different schools my senior year. And we understood that, so we agreed to her request. Timmy's request was right behind it, can I stay too? And we said, no, you're too young. We're not ready to be separated from you yet. But then over the next few months, as we watched how things were going with my mother and my brother, my mom turned 77 in November. So her ability to care for Michael is decreasing. Michael's needs with Duchenne muscular dystrophy are constantly increasing. And we realized that with the way things were going, Mom would likely be calling us in less than a year and asking us to leave the field to come back and help her take care of Michael. So we revisited Timmy's requests. Timmy still felt the same way, and so we agreed to his request for him to stay in the States with my mother and my brother and to help take care of Michael, meeting the need that Mom is not able to meet. That's going to be one of our biggest challenges as we head back out to the mission field, having both of our kids leaving us at the same time. And yet the opportunity is a new one for Jennifer and me to work together in missions, where in the past she's had her assignment, I've had mine, now we'll be working as a close team. We want to invite you to partner with us in mission, and there are several aspects to that. For us, we pledge to you to faithfully share the gospel message in West Africa, to report to you regularly through newsletters, to pray for your ministry here in the States. You know, one thing that we've observed every time we come back on home service is that the need for church work, for mission outreach in the States is growing rapidly. And we don't get to be part of that because we're not living here. But we know that you guys are, and we'll be praying for you in your ministry here. And then when you do have a chance to send short-term teams out there, our pledge to you is that we will be your support. That is our assignment by LCMS Office of International Mission. Help any teams or individuals that are coming in any way that we can to help you to be successful in your trips and for it to be a positive experience for you and for the partner churches. And so my call is to serve groups like you. We ask you also then to send short-term teams out there. The opportunities are there. The need is there. We also ask you to pray for our ministry as missionaries in West Africa, to encourage us through letters, emails, or phone calls, and to support us financially as individuals and or as a congregation. I've left a packet of information for Julie to review that gives the congregation an opportunity as a whole to sponsor us as missionaries. But we also invite you as individuals to help support us. Financially, our needs are large. For us to stay on the mission field and work there for a year costs us about $125,000 to $130,000 each year. And so we need a lot of individual and congregational supporters to be able to continue that service that God has called us to. We have a short slideshow here that just gives an overall picture of what life has been like for us over the past 12 and a half years serving based in Nigeria. Some of these pictures are from Nigeria, some are from Liberia or from Sierra Leone or from Ghana. And I'll comment on a few of these as we move through them. Jennifer, Heather, and Timmy were all very involved in music ministry in the Joss community. This is in the congregation in the village where I grew up, where my parents were doing Bible translation. And this is down at the church headquarters. Last year, or 2 years ago, I guess now, in 2011, they celebrated their 75th anniversary. This is the person known as the dancing pastor. In Nigeria, we had quite a bit of crime, and the criminals liked to use motorcycles. So in a number of the cities, they've banned motorcycles, and they use those three-wheelers instead. They're not fast enough to outrun the police. This is our living room in Joss. This one's one of the congregational chairmen from the village area where I grew up. Heather with her friends on her 17th birthday. One of the doctors, he was my age mate down in the village. He's now serving as a doctor and a farmer down there. And over in Liberia, this is the Discount Tire of Texas, the Discount Tire of Liberia. A little different there than here. Roads. I love this. The kid's shirt, you probably can't read it very well, but it says, "Life is good." And it's one of the things that we do see often with their attitudes there. Whatever they have, whatever their needs are, they're quick to express, "Life is good. We thank God for what He's given us." This is the Pastoral Training Center in Sierra Leone that serves Sierra Leone and Liberia both. This is some of the diamond mining going on in Sierra Leone. It completely destroys the farms, and it's really just, it's like a lottery ticket. If you get the diamond, then you get something. If not, you lose hours or days or months of your life. It's the new seminary that's being built in Ghana. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. So you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and man. To me, what stands out in this passage is, do not let kindness and truth leave you. My personality is one where I find it pretty easy to say, don't let truth leave you. But when I try to hold on to the truth, especially if I try to share the truth, I make no progress if kindness is not right there with it. I was talking with the pastor after one of our presentations here in the States, and he said, we sometimes have the opposite problem. It's easy for us to say, don't let kindness leave you. We can be kind to our neighbors, but we often do it at the expense of sharing the truth with them. We sometimes have the feeling that for us to speak out with truth, we'll be offending somebody or being abusive to them, and so we withhold the truth of God's plan of salvation from people because we don't want to make them angry. We want to be kind to them. And kindness without truth cannot accomplish God's will either. Truth without kindness can't accomplish it. And so his wisdom here states, don't let kindness and truth leave you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones. To me, this is so important. As I look back at what's happened over the past 12 months, my wisdom says things didn't go right. They shouldn't have happened that way. We shouldn't have had a short notice evacuation from Nigeria. We shouldn't have had closed doors to the ministry that was taking place there. But when I open my eyes and say, God's wisdom is greater than mine, even to the point that I cannot understand it, but I know that it's there. That's what gives me the hope and the anticipation that I need to move forward, to transition into the next stage of the mission work that God has called us to. It's not easy. In my mind, I know that's the case. In my heart, I often find myself several steps behind.
I will hold up my head, firmly march where I'm led. Now that I see the way, I'm walking it day by day. I will not fear this road, gladly I'll bear this load, and I will not think twice, because I am walking with Christ. I am walking that line,
Walking by, don't look back.
walking that
Walking
I'm on the right track. I'm never wrong. He's holding my hand,
Hold my
and everything's fine. I'm walking in line to the promised land.
Why don't you walk with me? Travel eternity, staying within His light, keeping the end in sight. We will not go astray. Together His will obey, and we will win the fight. We are walking with Christ.
I'm walking that
Walking by, don't look back. Walking
I'm on the right
by,
track. I'm never wrong.
never
He's holding my hand,
hold my
and everything's fine. I'm walking in line to the promised land. Though my feet may often stumble, I will not be down for long. He has called me to commitment, and my resolution strong. So when Satan clouds the vision, and his poison darts are thrown, I will look back on these challenges just to see how much I've grown. I'm walking that line,
walking
never
by,
look back.
don't look
I'm walking that
back. Walking
I'm on the right
by,
track. I'm never alone.
never
He's holding my hand,
hold my
and everything's fine. I'm walking in line to the promised land. And everything's fine. I'm walking in line. I'm walking that line.
We have a couple prayer requests for our family as we head out. It is going to be a real challenge for us to be separated from our kids at a time that we were not anticipating that. Just the change in our plans is difficult for us, and yet we know that God is with them and that He'll be with us as well. Another prayer request that we have right now is that on Wednesday morning we loaded our 12-passenger Ford van into a 20-foot shipping container, and it is in Houston right now, waiting to head out on a ship tomorrow, heading to Ghana to help us with hosting teams. Our prayer for that is that God would help the process to go smoothly through customs and clearing here, and for shipping out to Ghana. It'll be 6.5 or 7 weeks before we see the container arrive in Ghana. So we're praying that there won't be any delays, so that once the container does get there, that it gets there in time to help us with our first teams coming in. Concordia University in Texas is sending a team out. That'll be our first formal team in Ghana. They're due to arrive on March 8th. So we are hoping that that 6.5 to 7 week window closes before the team gets there. We'll make do if they don't. Flexibility is the name of the game there, but it is our prayer request that God helps us to do that so that we're ready for the team when they come. I do want to open up to a few questions. I think we've got about 8 minutes left if anybody has some questions. And then also, as you're leaving, if you would like to stop by and just take a look at our display over in the corner, we do have some postcard prayer cards there that we would love for you to pick up and put on your fridge or something as a reminder to regularly pray for the missionaries and ministries taking place throughout the world, but especially for us. So we're open to questions. And if you have questions for Heather or Timmy, they would like to give one-word answers, don't let them do that. And Jennifer will answer more too, but I'm going to ask them to come up so that if you have a question for them, they can answer that. Testing. Yes. Heather and Timmy, they will be together at my mother's place. My mom lives in Denton, just north of Dallas, but Heather graduates from high school in May, and she'll be going up to Nebraska, to Concordia, Seward, Nebraska for college. At that time, Timmy will be on his own then with my mother and my brother. Yes. My brother is 45 years old. He was diagnosed when he was age 5. He's completely off the charts for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. In spite of his situation, he still tutors college students in math. They come over to the house and he tutors them in his bedroom. He has 3 3-hour respiratory treatments every day to keep his lungs clear so that he can breathe. That's the bulk of his day. Yes.
I didn't write it, but I just helped us to sing it. Oh, thank you.
The second song is from a group called A Cappella, and the song title is Walking That Line.
Yeah, we listened to the second one. We didn't have written down. We just listened to it over and over again. And Heather and I listened to it and tried to write it down and figure it out. Thank you. Yeah, it speaks volumes to our situation right now.
Yes. Okay, the question was on the comparison of Christian and Muslim growth in Africa, that the Christian growth is higher in rate than the Muslim growth. And is that Muslims being converted, or is that other groups being converted to Christianity? I think that primarily it is other groups being converted to Christianity, but there is a lot of work among the Muslims in Africa. And there are a lot of Muslims that do get converted to Christianity. One of the ways that that happens actually is that the Muslims believe during certain festival times in the year, anything that they dream during that time is a vision from God. And so people are regularly praying that during those times, God will speak to the Muslims in their dreams. A lot of Muslims will testify conversion to Christianity because God told them to in their dreams, without any contact otherwise with Christians.
One difficulty is, though, that there are some states in Nigeria that have Sharia law right now. And so if you're in a family that is Muslim, then it is your family's duty to kill you if you have become a Christian. So we have friends who are on the run from their families because they can't let their extended relatives know where they are.
Jos had a population of close to 1 million, so it was a fairly good-sized city. Accra, the capital of Ghana, is a population of about 9.5 million. So that will be a big change for us to go to a city of that size. While we're here in the States, home service time is still part of our mission budget, so we are still employed during this time through LCMS as missionaries, visiting churches and individuals, speaking wherever there's an opportunity to do that is one of the assignments to missionaries, so they consider this still part of our duties, which we love. Normally our home time is 2 to 3 months, or I should say historically it's been 2 to 3 months. But about 2 years ago, we switched over from the funding model. LCMS has been switching all of their missionaries over to a new funding model where Synod does not carry a missionary pool fund anymore, but each individual missionary family has to raise their own support, and then that's it. Now, it usually takes longer than 2 or 3 months to be able to visit enough congregations to raise the support that we need for the next term of service. So when we came last time, we were here for about 6 months. We were planning to come this time for 5 months, but it wasn't supposed to happen until August of 2013. And then coming early between the evacuation and the regular home service duties, we ended up staying longer. So this will have been almost about 10 months before we get back out there this month now. But then we'll be out there for 2.5 years. We'll come back in 2015. My assignment is to work with Missouri Synod. The communities, the mission communities in Africa have found that they cannot exist on their own. And so we all group together to support each other in so many different ways. One of the things that I did, I taught at the Lutheran High School in Chicago. When I came down here, I was too far away from any Lutheran high schools, so I went to public school. After a couple of years, I left there and went to computer tech support and got computer training. When I went out to Nigeria, then I was one of 2 or 3 computer technicians in the community that worked with all of the missionaries to keep their computers running. That was not my assignment, so that was my hobby. But, things like medical care. We don't have any Lutheran hospitals in Nigeria. So whenever one of us would get sick, we would go to SIM hospital or to the Baptist hospital or, whatever it was. So we all drew on each other for support and worked together for the common cause of spreading the gospel. That said, that often caused tension with home offices from a number of those missions, because they would look at it and say, you know, you are assigned by us to meet the needs of our goals, and this is a distraction to you. It's a hard balance to work out. I've never felt guilty for it. I have sometimes been reprimanded for it. I have sometimes been applauded for it, but I've never felt guilty for it, and I'm thankful for that.
We had to make a choice whether we would attend her graduation or help her settle into college. And I think settling her into college is a little bit more important. Also, this is a tender subject. Graduations in Nigeria are a little more meaningful than here. And so her graduation here isn't quite as important to her as what she left behind. And so we asked her, do you want us to come to your graduation? She said, graduations here are lame. But she will have family at her graduation.
So we're coming back August 4th, and we'll be here just for 1 month to take her up to Nebraska, get her settled into college, and be there for a few days at the start of college, and then head back. Yes.
Yes, I want to be a missionary music teacher, and I want to go back to Nigeria. I don't know that that'll happen, but yeah, that's what I've wanted to do practically my whole life.
Yeah, what I would like to do, if it's possible, would be to go back to the school that we attended in Nigeria and teach high school math there.
I do need to let people that have other responsibilities feel free to leave, but at the same time, if there are people that do want to stay here longer, that's fine with me too. I'll be presenting again at the 11 o'clock adult Bible class. So I don't want to chase anybody out, but please do feel free to leave. And thank you so much for letting us come and share with you.